We need unity in this country so that we can act more like the French and start really protesting. Because it's time to really protest. I was just looking on Craigslist to see if there's any good apartments there, and there's a house that was like, it's like an all vegan co-op they're looking for, and then they in the title of their thing it was like Corona safe, which for a second I would because in my mind I was in like Craigslist mindset. I was thinking like 420 friendly Corona. I'm like, oh, they're vegans who like Coronas, and then I was like, oh right,
right.
they're stupid COVID. But I'm like, it's 2023. I just who was COVID precaution forward in their fucking vegan co-op.
But it's funny you mentioned that though. Like words mean so different now. Like the other day I was looking at dating apps, and like this guy was like, masculine, verbal, and so then I immediately just went to like, oh, is he autistic?
Yeah.
Like, is he verbal?
Verbal, yeah, as opposed to nonverbal.
Dom-verbal.
Yeah, like verbal and like talk. Yeah, like you dirty talk.
Descriptors.
Yeah.
Maybe it's better he's nonverbal.
Yeah, how verbal is he really? His communication is not going great. Yeah. Well, will you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I am Ruby Dickulous. I'm a comedian here in Austin, Texas. I'm 42. Am I supposed to go on about my stats? So I'm 6'2", 235 pounds, and losing. That's a variable number still with the Ozempic.
Yeah, you're on Ozempic.
Yeah.
Which, I am scared for you.
I know. You expressed concern about that, and I'm in good hands.
Okay, but I heard that when you lose weight on Ozempic, you're mostly losing lean muscle mass and not as much fat.
I would say that's actually, I did do a follow-up body composition, and that would prove to be correct. So I was a little disheartened that my entire body fat percentage did stay the same.
Right.
However, like in my goal is I was a big like bodybuilder. I was trying to fit in the muscle bears for many years back then. So I'm naturally a very thin, tiny waisted person.
Okay.
And I'm really trying to get back to that. So
so you actually do want to lose muscle mass.
Right. And like the goal of losing muscle mass then makes you less efficient at burning food.
Right.
But then if you're not eating, it's not really a thing. So the goal is to like lose as much mass as possible, whether it be because your metabolism burns sugar, fat, and then muscle, right?
Right.
And the goal is continue on until I am like, 190, and then my muscle. I have muscle memory, so I'm still lifting. I was very shocked at that. I went and did a follow up and was like, great, the percentage hasn't changed, but I've lost almost 40 pounds. So,
right.
But overall, I had a food addiction after I stopped drinking. So then it was like, what can I do to just
So you can afford to lose some muscle mass.
Yeah, I'm trying to be more petite.
Okay.
As we age.
All right. Well, then maybe that makes sense
Men
for you.
get more selective over 40.
Yeah.
Whereas before they would blow their dick in a giant husky woman. Yeah. Age tends to shave off.
Yeah, that last.
A few dress sizes.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, nice. What is your controversial opinion today?
So, one I wanted to talk about, I think was the Electoral College. I think that's misinterpreted a lot in our society. I do a lot of studying of history. So, to know the future, look at the past, that old saying. Our founding fathers, albeit white men that were trying to create a homogenous society catered towards white people.
Well, they were trying to create what they considered a pluralistic society, just like of the different kinds of white people.
Right.
They were like, how can we all get along even though we are from different ethnicities? We have these different religions. Because at the time, those people, like if you think of, Asian people right now or various like Latin countries, they don't think of themselves as just Asians or just Latin, they think of themselves as Chinese or Korean or Japanese or Vietnamese. And so we did this thing where it was like, okay, now we're all just going to consider ourselves white, which don't get me started on that concept, but it's an interesting thing because they really were like they thought of themselves as quite different from each other. They thought of themselves as like, hey,
Very
we could be
diverse.
enemies. We're quite a
Right.
diverse group. You know, it's like a
Different
diverse group of
thoughts.
white people. But
Yeah.
back then, that was really diverse. Protestants and Catholics and this or that, and like Germans and French and, you know, all these kind of people, English and eventually Irish. So it was a leap forward. It's just that they didn't extend it out to other
Right.
parts of the world.
And like, you know, and what I've learned and what I've spoke to, you know, historians, people that study ancient Rome and ancient Greece. I myself have dabbled in studying it. I wouldn't say I have a PhD in it. Like the people I've talked with us about is that the founding fathers' intent was, right, they locked themselves in that room and nobody's leaving until they got out. One of the discoveries was looking at all the previous democracies and finding out where they went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And every democracy went wrong when it came to conspiracy theories and no baseline in fact. And Electoral College was to prevent mob rule, because if you look at every society, they were taken down by mob rule. You create these factions that start believing these wild stories like the stars were peepholes for God to look down on us on. And, you know, the human mind itself races forward without a baseline in fact. So the Electoral College allowed it to have this union of states that you couldn't have the popular vote overruled, because the popular vote's not what we always want in a republic democracy. We want to be able to have some levers. The problem with that is nobody could foresee the internet, right? So addressing the real problem of the Electoral College isn't doing away with it and allowing mob rule. We have already seen mob rule because the internet's allowed it.
Yeah.
So like this mass communication brings, everybody wants to identify with their groups. They do. Now they feel more powerful. And then misinformation, these conspiracies come in and they're emboldened and they're just, it leads to violence. Whether without the internet it would be violence now, or with the internet it's just hacking on a keyboard.
Yeah.
My thing is I get the purpose of removing it. My stance is it should stay in place, and we should go back and reinstate the FCC fairness doctrine and include the internet, right? So we should be able to monitor what we call news and press, what we call allowing people that have journalistic integrity to be the news conveyors without opinion. I think that would fix where we are instead of removing the Electoral College. That's my controversial take.
So you think we need the Electoral College, if anything, maybe more than ever, because not only do we have conspiracy theory kind of minds, but now we have the internet really spreading those things around. And so
I think it would be much worse without it.
Yeah.
I think we're already like, I think the safeguard it was created as is no longer even valid, which I will agree with. I disagree with removing it because the popular vote lends itself to more mob rule. I think we're already there, and how do we circumvent misinformation is the goal. And to that, we go back to Reagan administration, and we took away the FCC fairness doctrine in 1987. So then you've got 93 is when CNN and Fox came out, and then the internet came out.
What was the
93.
FCC fairness doctrine?
So the FCC fairness doctrine was something that governed journalistic integrity. So there was a bipartisan board of people that decided what was fair and balanced media to create a separate. So it wasn't state media where it was just being disseminated by the government. The press is supposed to serve as a check and balance on our government that inform the electorate. Unfortunately,
In the FCC fairness doctrine?
So the FCC fairness doctrine, the reason it was repealed was ready for internet. They knew, so the biggest lobbyist was Ted Turner with CNN and Fox News, Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
So when they were forming that as the internet was coming on, they got rid of it. And you can kind of look at the history of journalism from that point on, and it ended. I had one of these legacy careers where I worked at CBS News. I was a broadcast journalism major at UT. I got an externship at CBS News in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I studied under Walter Cronkite's mentor. So Walter Cronkite got his first job when he dropped out of UT here in Austin. He was offered a job at a newspaper bureau in New York, and the owner of that bureau was Van Kennedy. Van Kennedy was my boss. And so he retired in New York and moved to Corpus Christi, Texas, and bought 2 TV stations and 2 radio stations. So I learned journalism, and I watched the fall of it under Cronkite's mentor. So I see it so drastically different today. where I think our independent journalists are doing a great job. We would have to FCC fairness doctrine repealed now would look more like breaking up corporate media to ensure there's independent journalism and not Sinclair and these gigantic mega companies that are all being funded by the same people that fund our government. So I think that if we shift focus on a more unifying, I really tend to stay away from divisive topics, but topics, because we're all too divided, but things that we can agree on. We all can agree on both sides that we are not getting correct information.
Right.
And we're not able to disseminate what's real anymore. And facts are starting to get a little fuzzy.
Right.
And I think that's where something similar to, I think repealing the FCC fairness doctrine was a huge mistake, and we're seeing the outcome of that.
And because now increasingly these like deep fakes and everything are becoming easier and easier for people to make more and more realistic. And so the need for real journalism is greater and greater every day.
Right.
So if we have the FCC fairness doctrine, if we reinstated that, that would mean that there needs to be a bipartisan panel of journalists who are. How does that actually work in terms of this is where we got the evening news before was.
Right. So I mean, it would look differently today, right? So they've tried to the internet, including that in and looking at where we've made mistakes in the past. Today it would look like, we say we have fact checkers on the internet, but they're all funded by Google and Facebook.
Right.
So again, money is the influence. It would have to be, how do you find people this day and age that want to do something for free? They have to care about it, right? So it would be people that are true journalists and a bipartisan effort that truly understand journalistic integrity and not spin and ad selling. And those people I don't know, that would be a good question to debate. Would they be appointed or elected?
Well, how did it work before?
They were appointed,
Okay.
but we didn't have, you have to admit then, we didn't have so many dissenting voices. Not everybody had an opinion. I like to tell people sometimes it shows if they have comments. It's like, this isn't a Facebook post. Nobody asked for your comment.
Right.
It's like everybody thinks they have an opportunity to say something. And we're not going to shut that down. It's just, again, finding a group of people. I don't know what that looks like. I just think that's the conversation that we should be having about the Electoral College instead of just like doing away with it. Because I don't think people, when they say that, truly understand what it was in place for and what would happen if that were the case now.
Right. Yeah. Do we really want to leave things up to the people when we've already seen how the people vote in a number of ways? And it's like, their people are so prone to being misguided by propaganda from both sides. The
human wants to belong to something.
They want to belong. People want to be sure.
They want to know the inside scoop to something.
Yeah. And they want to have enemies that are clear cut and then kind of a black and white understanding of who's the good guy and bad guy.
There always has to be a villain.
There always has to be a villain. Yeah, that really appeals to the human mind. And so it's pretty easy to get people to be riled up about one version of propaganda or another.
Yeah, and like mob rule,
yeah,
right, infiltrates itself into the government. And that's what we see, right, with this Trumpism and everything. Like, regardless of what you think politically, I look at it as just apply that to history, and then you can see where we're headed. I know somebody that was somebody I look up to greatly is she's a physician, and she was a Romanian that was pushed out by Russia. And, generally conservative, but when Trump got in office, she was like, this is not real. Like, this is the goal. This is heading towards autocracy. And watching someone that's hyper-conservative change their opinion based on just facts, because she's all about data and facts, and her fleeing communism and seeing it happen throughout her lifetime, and the way the news has become weaponized, it's interesting to hear her opinions on that, because that's a lot of information I get from her of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. It's like, we're not too many steps away from the black van pulling up and taking you away because you don't agree
Right.
with the political party that's in power right now.
Right.
You know?
And I think that goes for either political party.
Right.
And I do think I think the people with the money and the influence are very happy for us all to be arguing about all kinds of stuff instead of really worrying about what they're doing with all the money and to our world. And so, yeah, like what I heard Tim Urban call it the other day is like our politics, like what we think of as politics, is really, it's more like a reality show, the real politicians of Washington D.C.,
Right.
et cetera. And that's what it is. It's like, so it's become, especially with the 24-hour news cycle and with cable news and all this, like it's just become a reality show thing. It's become entertainment that also keeps us really divided and
ads.
arguing. And yeah, the ratings are good, but there's not this journalistic integrity. And anyone who's paying much attention and has any kind of intelligence and is aware that they need to be seeking out independent journalists. But it's like for the masses, there's still just a lot, like even people who want to escape it. Like my parents were just on one of these 3-month-long cruises, and the only TV that they play is either Fox and CNN. And my mom's like, I don't want to see, but you kind of do want to check in with the news when you're out on these cruises, but like, she knows this is all bullshit, but a lot of people don't, or a lot of people, you think that it's bullshit, but then you're watching and you still find yourself going like this. And
well, and I was trained to read the AP. I can't get anyone to read the AP, and even I go to read the AP, and it's like, it's supposed to be real news.
Yeah,
that's where journalists get their news from, and then they spin it.
Yeah,
so it's like we're all getting the same message from the AP, but then now there's like, the conspiracy theorists have debunked the AP as a partisan hack, and you're like, okay, but if we just call everyone that doesn't agree with our 1 or 2 beliefs and we discredit them, then we have to have credibility again in informing the electorate.
We need to find something. Because I will say too, some of the websites and things that I used to rely on for fact checking, a couple of years ago, I started noticing, oh, this is propaganda.
Yeah.
This is also they're just telling the correct answer, but this isn't the real answer. And so, yeah, you can't really trust anything anymore. We can't trust the AP. We can't trust colleges to have our best, the whole academia, journalism, much less the government, everything. Like I don't think any of them are trustworthy. Yeah. So
it's become polluted, and like, I'm not, but like what Elon Musk uncovered at Twitter, it's like, well, then you have this giant mega company that is extracting data. It's the new oil from humans. But then you're suppressing data, and you're supposed to be this just microblogging site. It's not supposed to have a political agenda. And, seeing like that, it's happening at Facebook. It's happening in these hyper-liberal cities where these headquarters are, and because everybody's influenced by it. So, if that's where we're getting our media, is the internet, then they need to be regulated. We need to tax them. They need to give out checks for the data they pay us. They should be paying for their product.
Yeah.
So, those are the conversations I think we can all get along and find unity, because unity is the way out of this.
I think that would be a very popular thing if someone said, hey, Google and Facebook and whatever need to write us all checks. Yeah, I think that we could get a lot of bipartisan support.
If we call that what it is.
Yeah.
We used to extract oil, and then they sold it to us. We bought, there was labor attached to it. There was a goods and service. And we're talking about, and today, we're just extracting my data, where I'm at, what I look at, what I like. And then you're selling, selling ad space to somebody else, what you took out of the ground. Well, the ground is me, then pay for it. I mean, you didn't. It's essentially the same thing you did. You take it out of Earth, and you don't care about Earth's outcome, where they're taking out of humans and don't care about the human outcome.
Or we can also change the incentive structures on the internet, where we need to start doing things where it's like, no, we're gonna pay for services a few bucks a month for this, that, or the other, instead of it all being about taking our data and selling us ads.
Yeah, we're like, it should be like a hybrid model where it's like I should jack off on camera for them to be able to get my data, right? Like, have to be something like a barter system there, where like, I'll go live You can have all of my data, and then you pay.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be a better, I mean, we need to do something because right now the companies have everything.
Right.
They're getting all the data, making money off us. We're buying stuff. They have the government in under their control. They control the propaganda.
Well, it's like you think about healthcare, right? Like post-pandemic, and we see these people that like firmly like have their mouth on pharma's teat, and they love Pfizer. I mean, in the gay community, it's very prevalent. You just take your vax, take your pills, take your PrEP. I've seen people that haven't had sex in 10 years and they're on PrEP. Well, that was a government. That was advertising that was told to you, like, you should take PrEP so you don't get AIDS. Well, no one's sneezing on you to get AIDS.
Right.
Like, you do remember that, but you're just beholden to these pharma companies. So it's
Right,
like
and PrEP does do some damage to your kidneys or liver or something.
osteoporosis, your bone health, damages kidney function. They claim it's irreversible, but that's kind of been their response to every incident of any drug side effect. They're like, well, it's reversible. When you stop taking it, when you stop fucking it, it's like...
Yeah.
And pushing that conversations push them towards a vaccine, not a vaccine, an injectable PrEP. So it's once a month, and it doesn't go through the liver. It's not causing a lot of the kidney and liver problems. They had a safe pill all along. They didn't give it to us because the patent had run out on the dangerous one.
Right.
But they didn't tell us that.
Yeah, so they can make more money.
So again, like, and who sponsors the news?
Right.
Pfizer, right? Everything's brought to you by Pfizer. And so that's... when we're getting public health, and we can't distinguish public health from pharma, we can't distinguish the internet goals. Like, are we banning TikTok because it's TikTok, or are we banning it because Mark Zuckerberg and Google are a part of the government now? Like,
right, it's hard to say.
I can't tell you, is that why we're banning it? Is it a true security risk? Because your fear of them taking their information is what you do. You're scared they're gonna...
Well, but then it would be, they're saying it would be worse if the Chinese government has our data, which maybe...
They already do.
Yeah.
I mean, they do.
Yeah. Well, I just heard somebody saying that there's going to be... The idea is that the Chinese will be able to just like steal all of our money one day because they'll have enough of our data that their hackers can do something.
I mean, look, China needs us to consume. There's an analogy I said a long time ago, was like there's an insect a wasp that goes and embeds itself in the roach and lays its eggs, but it neutralizes it. It's still able to move around until that egg hatches and then it dies. That's what China's doing to us. There's no going to be like the internal strife that's happening right now is like China's happy about. They're happy, but they want us to consume. As long as we're consuming, they're good.
Right.
And,
they'll keep the cockroach alive.
They don't want to invade us and kill us because then they wouldn't have... 70% of our economy is consumption, so they don't want us dead. They do want to become the reserve currency, and that's what's happening. And we don't talk about that openly because of oil. Again, the media is not out there saying that China, Russia, Saudi, and Iran have quietly behind closed doors and openly said their goal is to take... China wants to sell everything in the yuan.
Yuans, yeah.
So you can't really... that's a whole nother topic. But.
Right. but America's probably in for a rude awakening in terms of our ability to buy everything so cheap forever. But how are we going to possibly actually do anything about this, considering... the pharmaceutical companies and whoever else has so much power? They have the government under their thumb. They have the media under their thumb. How could we possibly change anything at this point?
Well, the root cause, in my opinion, is informing an electorate. So tackling that issue, I don't know. That would take some great minds at how do we fix that issue. But ignoring it is our decline. Yeah. In my opinion. And... my suggestion to fix it is we have to do away with the corporate parties.
Right. There needs to be an enlightenment. There needs to be an enlightenment of the populace where they realize that both of these the Democrats and Republicans are all just in service of the powerful, wealthy corporations, and neither one of them is actually fighting. I mean, and they will, do these things that are kind of like blue team stuff versus red team stuff a little bit, but those are essentially, it's essentially theatrics, and they're just getting us excited so that we're not paying attention to what they're really doing with all of the resources, and getting us all to consider, to never think about our health in holistic, real, long-term, kind of ways, instead of thinking of it as, hey, how can we eat well and exercise and have good, but instead it's, well, there's pills for everything,
right?
Or surgery, if not pills. Yeah, exactly.
I could possibly eat less, but is there a pill for corruption?
Is there who makes Ozempic? Who's manufacturing that?
AbbVie.
Okay. Well,
Is it AbbVie? No. Yeah.
Well,
one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know though. I don't know what it's like to be 40 plus trying to lose weight.
Novo Nordisk makes it, anyways. Who's also very much sitting in the White House right now, so there is a reason why its popularity surge, regardless of its efficacy. But I don't know the solutions. I just know, like, to me, the divisionary topics, and this can segue into the next topic, is I don't identify. So I love the name of the podcast, Politically Non-Binary, because I don't. I don't identify with either party, and I'm at my point of voting just for the less of two evils. And I know people that have renounced their citizenship and have left the country. I know people that are making moves like that, and due to their valid fear of autocracy coming in the next election, of someone not willing to step down, someone not willing to accept it, and having the judiciary placed. Yeah. So, like, that's where it gets into, like, my other topic is, is the drag bills. I have a very conflicting view on the drag bills. I'm obviously against them. It is not going to put me out of work. I still am going to be performing as a stand-up comedian at 18 and up places.
What are the drag bills actually saying? Can you give us a little rundown of the various drag bills, kind of what's going on?
Well, I mean, they're written by people that are informed by crazy conspiracies and things, and they're just really, to me, distractions, and intentionally, is that, one of the main drag bills is that a man can't dress as a woman and a woman can't dress as a man, and because it's sexual in nature. And it just goes back to how we view women. They're just fuck holes. They're not.
Right. I was going to say, I've never understood that kind of wording in this era. Like, if it was still the 50s, or even, not that long ago, like.
Well, those people are still in power.
Right. There's just they're just the 80-year-olds now in power. And so it's like, dude, what do you mean, like, a man or a woman? Like, I thought the feminists had kind of done a good job of being like, hey, women can wear pants. Now, you're not even allowed to be a men's rights activist, but there should have been a movement that was like, hey, men can wear dresses and all that kind of stuff. But this idea that in 2023 you're telling people you can't, like, am I dressed as a man right now?
No, but
you know what I mean? Like,
view, yes.
A few decades ago, this was illegal for me to wear these, because that would have been me dressing as a man. So the idea of, like, what is dressing, like, what you can't wear, like, people who are, females can't wear clothes that are marketed to men. Males can't wear clothes that are marketed to women. Like, what are we really saying? There's not a such thing as, like, God didn't say these are men's clothes and these are women's clothes.
I love Eddie Izzard's saying on it, these aren't men or women's clothes, they're my clothes.
Right.
And ultimately that should be defined as liberty and expression. So I'm against, I guess I'm against.
Oh, wait, let's see what it actually says. Yeah. This is filed by Republican Senator Brian Hughes of Mineola. It would impose a $10,000 fine on business owners who host drag shows in front of children if those performances are sexually oriented. Okay. Yeah. The bill defines a sexually oriented performance as one in which someone is naked or in drag and appeals to the prurient interest in sex. Okay. Prurient interest is defined as erotic, lascivious, abnormal, unhealthy, degrading, shameful, or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion. All right. So no poop stuff in the drag shows. If there's kids around. If there's adults, that's fine.
someone naked or in drag, it's like they're fighting to say, just take the word drag out. Like,
Well,
yeah, we're not going to fuck in front of kids.
Well,
but
yeah, it
like,
also says drag and appeals. So you'd have to be in drag
Yep.
and appealing to the prurient interest, but it's a very vague thing, so it's hard to like
Who's gonna
when
enforce
is it
that?
erotic or not? Like if you shimmy once, is that erotic
Right.
now? Unhealthy, degrade. Yeah, it's hard to a morbid interest. What's a morbid interest in sex?
And this is specifically in Texas.
This is the
yeah,
Texas.
this
one.
is the Texas bill. You know,
When is interest in sex morbid versus not morbid?
I mean, I guess that guy that sits on that glass jar and
Yeah, if you
what's
might
that
hurt
called?
yourself, if
What's
you're
the name of that
interested in
viral
dangerous
video?
sex.
Everybody can look up.
Oh, I don't know. He sat on a
That's
glass
pretty
thing?
morbid. He sat on a mason jar, and it
Yeah.
was like that's what they're using that as an
I would
example
call
of
that
like
okay. Sure, don't do that in front of kids.
kids.
I agree.
But kids watch that on their iPads.
True, but we don't need to
we
be.
watched it when we were young. Yeah, two girls, one cup, or that guy sitting on the mason jar and
Yeah.
it shatters.
Well,
It-
yeah, Two
it's
Girls,
like
One
we
Cup
were
has-
watching that when we were younger, and so I think the argument is like, you know, I personally and we have this situation in not just America and the world, but particularly in America where we're hyper individual because of the internet, because we have everything in our hands. We don't need to ask for help on a lot of things. But like, I don't perform for kids.
Yeah.
So like when I think about it, I am thinking my individualistic view where I am conflicted because I don't perform for kids. I've never performed for children. And the one time a kid came, I was a little uncomfortable because
Right. It's like doing comedy. Like, oh God, every now and then there is a child there, but we would prefer them to not be. And we tell the parents, like, hey, this is about to happen.
Right.
Would you like to leave, or do you want your kid to get a weird education?
yeah. And like, but I mean, I also grew up with like, I mean, and I'm talking about when I'm doing stand up, I stay out of like these gay events where children are included because that's just not me. But the jokes I say are not, or they're funny, but I don't know. I heard most of the stuff from my grandmother when I was 5. Like a lot of the thought process I have is from my grandmother, whose husband was transgendered, and the biggest shame in our family was that he was a cross-dresser. So like, I have a lot of my own internal shame. But I also would have liked to have seen drag when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it's on TV. RuPaul's Drag Race is on in every country. And, you know, arguably if you watched Friday's episode, you would say, my God, they were just naked strippers. And it's like, yeah, they were. And pasties and it was a trans woman doing it. So, but it's on the air and advertisers are allowing it. And so why are you going to go knock down the door of a gay club when if a parent brings their child into it? So I argue both points. One, I don't perform for kids. I don't think it's appropriate. Again, the liberty people should be talking about how their children, you get to govern your own children.
Yeah.
You don't, there are parents out there selling their children into prostitution. My trans grandfather molested my aunt. So there are those situations where, yes, it's going to happen, but that doesn't identify the entire situation. So one, the laws passing don't bother me. I'm not, most of the drag queens are outrageously making these outrageous hyperbole claims that they're going to be out of work and they're going to be acting like Harriet Tubman doing drag.
Because they're saying like they could shut down anything. This is a vague enough wording that they could shut down anything. But what I don't understand is like, where is this a complete canard? Because I think that the idea with these bills is that was the original thing with these drag queen story hours was that they were saying like this is happening like in elementary schools or this is happening in libraries, that there are these events happening that are for kids. So what happened with that? Do you know the truth, the reality behind the idea of that they were doing these that were, because there's a difference between a parent taking their kid to something, choosing that, or letting them watch TV, or the kid having the internet, versus at school this is happening, or at a government sanctioned library event marketed to kids. It's, I mean, even then it's like that sounds voluntary to me.
Yeah, I mean, what fucking parent takes their kid to the library today anyways?
Right.
So it's
that would be great if we could get anyone
just
to the
taking
library.
their kids to the fucking library.
Right.
And then so if there's a drag show there and we're actually getting people to go to the library, that's a good thing.
Right.
And their response to that's like, defund it. Okay, well then get rid of libraries.
Yeah.
Because
but
that's where we're headed.
Is that what happened? Because I don't think it was ever like at an elementary school or something, right? No one was like ambushed by these.
No, but these kids, I mean, we're talking about legislators and people that are writing policy based off conspiracy and based off old age. There are young gay kids. I was one of them. I was the gayest little kid in the world until people told me I shouldn't be. I mean, I was choreographing dance moves and like if anyone was a whore at 5, it was me, you know?
Same. Yeah.
And like, so it's like, don't deprive me of like my own free will. My parents were gone. Like all that stopped when I heard the garage door open, you know? I was in there like putting shows on and doing my own thing. So these kids are getting to express themselves the way they want to. So there are kids that are cross-dressing in ages. I mean, not just trans, but like drag. They love drag because it's on TV. And so, I mean, just to act like I didn't exist as a gay child and suddenly I turned 18, it goes back to we chose it.
Yeah.
So the way the bills are established, I'm all for protecting children. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I just have a different experience, and
right. And the reality is, this shit just isn't even happening. Like this is a bill that's just a culture war bill that has nothing to do with anything. It's just distraction. It doesn't seem like anything it's going to actually do anything. I don't think that I mean, maybe there are a few events that were marketed to kids.
There are shows, and I think they've always left it up to the parents. The others, like I would say the Republican conservative side, is that these parents are brainwashed into thinking this is normal and okay, and that they are basically selling their children to prostitution, like letting them go watch porn. And I'm like, but they're watching porn.
Yeah.
I mean, they could check their browser history.
I don't know. You're supposed to be the party of small government. Do you really want
intrusion?
Right. Just if the parents are fucking crazy and they want, and sometimes I just want to tell these conservative people, like, look, if you're so worried that all these queers are going to be led astray into sterilizing themselves, then guess what? You got fewer queer kids in the next generation. Right. Praise the Lord. He works in mysterious ways. Who cares? Just fucking, it's not your business. It's just funny because I remember when I was a like teenager and I was at girls' camp, like Mormon girls' camp. There were these 4 women who were like 4 girls who were a little bit older than me, who all dressed up as like a boy band one year. This was in the height of like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and stuff. And so they all dressed up in a boy band. I know one of them like taped her boobs down. They drew little goatees on, and I was so turned on and into it. I mean, one of them I already had a huge crush on. And then they would just like fake kiss other girls, like who were their fans and stuff. And so there was this full on drag king thing. We didn't call it that. It was just that they just did that for their skit night. And then there was like another night that they came back and did it. And it was like, there was a frenzy. It was a riot. Like we all, like I wasn't the only little lesbian or bi or something kid who was like, what? We were all like super into it. And then the next year there was new leadership and they were like, there will no longer be any opposite gender dressing, whatever they called it. So it was that kind of thing. But they were right. Like it did absolutely. I mean, I was already fucking gay and whatever, but it was absolutely like a little gay experience that I was getting to have. And very like, I wanted to be one of those fans who was fake kissing her, you know, and it was, but it's, I wasn't going to be gay or not gay based on that. I just got to have a little glimpse of something intriguing.
And that's where we talk about, representation. Mm-hmm. I think when we have blinders on and say there's no representation, we're acting like we're still in a they're responding to us from a puritanical view. Okay, but we do have representation, and it is there, and the internet's there, and you can find what you want to find, and like, should there be a drag class in elementary school? No. Okay. But I mean, elementary school is kind of like drag, but I will share this experience, like when the first time I ever cross-dressed, because I have my gender issues. I definitely identify as part of the trans community. I don't transition because I'm going to ride my white male privilege until the wheels fall off of it, But the thing is like, I was trying to dress up as a woman because I looked to women as my leaders, my mom and my grandma. It wasn't that I didn't have a dad. I had a dad. My brother was out playing football with him, and I was like, I'm going shopping with the girls.
Yeah.
And I'm hanging out in grandma's closet because she had wigs and jewelry. And so, like, there was a time we drove to Louisiana to be at my grandmother's house, and it was 6 hours. It's on the border of Texas and Louisiana. And we drove 6 hours to get there, and I was always dragging my older brother. He's like 2 years older than me. I was just making him like be my prop man,
Yeah.
like move stuff around, move this in there, stack it on top of each other. The show's gonna start at 5. And like my brother's like this rough and tumble, butch, straight guy. And so I did that my whole life. And then until 11 and 12 was the first time I really cross-dressed with makeup and hair. And we got to my grandma's. They all went out shopping. I stayed home because we'd just gotten there. They just went to go get some stuff to eat, right?
Yeah.
We went in grandma's closet, and I'm like, come on, Josh, like, let's do our hair and makeup. And he was just all for it. 'Cause
Yeah.
we're just fucking kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're going to put the show on so when they get back. And then we're like listening. They come in. We go into the living room. We play the music. And I put this whole routine on. And like, you know, my mom and my grandma and my aunt were the only ones there.
Yeah.
And I remember it being funny, and like we sat in my grandma's lap and we were laughing. All of this not knowing that we had this closet cross-dressing grandfather.
Yeah.
And he was also our step-grandfather, which was always told to us to call him Paul. He's not Papa or Grandpa. It's like... And then my mom loaded us in the car and drove us home and started smoking. She never smoked. And she stopped and bought a pack of cigarettes and just smoked the whole way home. Was just like shaking, furiously mad. And we were like, we just drove here. Why are we in so much trouble that we're having to drive all the way back home? And she's like, someone in our family does this and we don't approve of it. And I need to know if he influenced y'all to do this. And so here I am like, and she's like, if you can guess who it is, then I'll tell you. And we're like, Dad? And she's like, no, it's not your father. It's like, it's Paul. And we're like, oh, like,
yeah.
and then it kind of, the way it was phrased,
Right.
and the way it was like we were being punished, and then it was like, ew, like we already didn't like Paul because we were told every day that he's not our real grandfather.
Right.
And then my grandmother also
So
tried to get us to kill him our whole life. And anyways, she would crush up her Premarin and put it in a coffee and say, if he wants to dress like a fucking woman, he can become one. And like, he probably did want to become a woman. But my mom was like, he was molesting me and making me into this little faggot that I am. And I'm like, that's not it.
Yeah,
it's the
wow.
JC
But
Penney's catalog.
that's interesting because that's the groomer, idea that they have now. Like these politicians are, are in the red team being like, they're grooming you into. So that's that same fear. They just think, this gender sexuality stuff. If you're doing cross gender sexuality stuff, then you're probably a pedophile and you're probably grooming the that's.
And this is in 93,
right?
When I was 12, 11 or 12, around that age. And so the when I got sober, I had to go through a lot, and I was always angry at my mother because I felt like I could have been so much more had I not had that shame attached to me with drag. So having that, seeing a drag queen story hour if I was a kid, my mom wouldn't have taken me to that fucking thing.
Right.
Like, regardless if I was wearing drag or trying to cross-dress as a kid or not, she just wouldn't have allowed me to do it.
Right.
So I think we part out, there's still kids that grow up with conservative parents. We just have the internet as an outlet to see there are people like us. I never thought there were people like me, except my crazy grandfather, right? Like, so I see the side of exposure, but I've created an act, ironically, that is not appropriate for children. So it's not in my lane. I'm all for freedom of expression, and I just think it's unconstitutional, and you're not going to catch me at 100-degree weather out on the Capitol when nobody's there on Saturday marching for it. And that's what they did this weekend, and I was like, nobody's inside.
Yeah.
This is all for internet. Like, the whole point of, like, civic action is to, like, show the people inside. There's numbers of people, and we're like, hey, we're going to go in and lobby and talk to them, and we were doing that.
We need to take a page out of the French playbook.
The revolution.
Yeah.
And I say that, and I've said it before and I've gotten flack for it, but if January 6th was bipartisan, we would have seen overnight change.
Yeah.
The fact they looked out and they're
point.
like, oh, there's a bunch of Trump flags. This is great. We'll fundraise on it and spin it and we'll drag it into trial into the next election.
I like that as your hot take. January 6th should have been a bipartisan revolution.
Hand in
it's
hand
so funny
with
to think of all these liberals. I know so many liberals, whether they're anarcho-communists or they generally think the whole system should burn down, and yet they look down on all the January 6 people.
Right.
It's like, you should have been there.
I know.
Put your fucking feet where your politics are.
Find your unity, turn the news off, and join hands and say, we're all being... There's no money left.
Yeah.
We're literally taking it from our taxes because we can't afford to pay the corporations and the corptocracy anymore. We will drag out Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell.
We all need to go take a shit on
them.
Nancy Pelosi's desk.
You know, say we want change the next day. We would have had universal health care. The balance, the budget would have been balanced. Everything would have been like, oh shit, they woke up.
All right, maybe that's the real point of this podcast is that, I mean, don't put this clip on Instagram, but we need to get people to have a bipartisan revolution where it's like maybe we need to have a better plan than the January 6th people. It's like that's been the problem too, is between, Occupy Wall Street just standing there holding hands, shouting with each other, and then we've got January 6th just taking a shit on someone's desk and taking selfies. Like, let's get serious.
So that's anti-mob mentality is unity. Mm-hmm. Everyone come together, burn it down, and not burn it down. Just replace our representatives.
Replace our representatives. Say, let's get everybody. And by the way, stop reelecting people who are older than 65.
Right.
Why don't we? You don't have to keep voting those people in.
Right.
Maybe let's just all fucking whatever parties are doing what. No more 65 plus year olds. They don't care about our lives.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would say 70. I think
I'm just trying to give us let's do a clean sweep for a minute.
Go back to the fridge and fight over 62 to 65. But there is if you look at the old Roman Empire, there was a point in having old people in power.
You want to sprinkle.
But you need diversity in age, too, because the young people we have coming in are taking the corptocracy money and immediately shifting their what was radical views into, no, we're pro-war, we're pro-this, it's all identity politics. And I'm like, I don't care what their identity is. I really want to see their voting history. I really want to see grassroots movement. I really want to see people with a unified message of how we're getting fucked by our government and not your individualistic thing, because individual leads to mobs.
Right.
It's just the end of empire, and it could be even worse than that.
Yeah, so that's what we really do need. We need unity in this country so that we can act more like the French and start really protesting. Because it's time to really protest. And so they've kept us all so, fed on cheap food and cheap entertainment and cheap pills that keep us happy enough to whatever. And and cheap, our politics is cheap entertainment too. Everything has just become this cheap shit to keep us just happy enough, just, placated enough to not actually protest. And it's time to be like, no, I don't care if you're against abortion. I don't care if you're against gay shit. I don't care if whatever. I will march with you. Let's all pick a fucking
find a unifying,
find a message that we can go. What day can we all get together and say there's some shit we can all agree on that fuck this government. That they need to listen to us, and we need to show that we can be united where it matters.
Yeah. That's the only way out. And
that's the only way out,
through unity and love and finding,
listening to the politicians actually listen to us, because otherwise they are only going to do what is in the interest of the people who are lining their pockets.
If I talk to somebody and they bring up politics and they're slamming their fist on the table, whether it be goddamn liberals or fucking conservative fascists, it's like you were all indoctrinated into this division, and it's like, that did not improve your quality of life at all. You're the things you're arguing. It's like, and my trans brothers and sisters, they're arguing all these points, and it's like, but don't you think universal health care would help alleviate a lot of these problems where there wouldn't be so many say, and wouldn't that help women's rights?
Right.
And wouldn't that can we go back to consolidating these divisionary?
Let's figure out what we all can agree on.
Right.
put a pause on some of the other stuff and go from there, because we need such deep systemic change. I don't think we need to overthrow the government, or at least we could try. We could try getting them to actually respond to our desires, our needs, instead of just the ones of their lobbyists and their corporations. So,
they did
let's
look
try
really
that.
Scared on January 6th at first.
Yeah,
so that tells me
and that was how many people?
If it was
how many?
everybody.
Yeah, how many people was January 6th?
I don't know. I don't know that number. What do we have that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's good information on that. You know how the numbers are always given.
I love that, but that's part of today's mob is let's all go, and they do it online, and it's partisan, and then they get there and they do all this crazy shit because that's what mobs do when they get together. It's all fueled by
2,000. That's nothing.
Yeah, that's nothing.
That's embarrassing. All right.
And then they felt emboldened they were going to take over the government because they were all there together, and to them that looked like a lot of people.
So we need 2 million people.
Yeah, you need.
We could do this with 2 million.
Yeah, and unfortunately, how that happens is this next big economic crash that's happening in the next 30 days. I predict on this podcast exclusive.
I would agree with that. I think we're sliding
and what's
in.
about to come. Poverty creates strife and unified strife. It's either a bomb lands in D.C. and we're all against who? The Chinese? Well, I mean, what are we going to do? Tell them our pronouns and ni hao, like my pronouns are? No.
They don't do pronouns
have to hate
in
Chinese people. Right.
It's all ta.
Right. Actually, yeah.
Except in the written, but yeah.
And so when we get into that conversation, it's it's going to take either one, economic casualty, or actual casualties on our soil. And that's the sad part, that it would take us to unify. But who are we unifying against? It's got to still be the corptocracy.
It's got to be against the corptocracy. Well, again, I think that's going to be the secret life of this podcast now, is what we're trying to do is develop bipartisan awareness that we need to all join together to make the government scared again.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, they should be scared.
Yeah, they need to be.
It is
they're
for
supposed
the
to
people,
be.
by the people.
They're supposed to be scared of us, and so we need to have a new January 6th. I don't know what we should call it. Probably not January 6th. Can't do it on the same day. They'll see that coming.
Yeah, I mean,
so what's a good weather day for this?
Make sure the
January
weather's
doesn't
good.
seem like the right one. Yeah, let's. I feel like September, October might be nice.
But now they.
September 11th? Yeah, we do September 11th.
But they ruined it for us because now there's 12-foot fences around the Capitol and everything. So they're like, hey, wait, it's starting. They're just not, they're not quite unified yet, but they will be eventually. Keep those fences up. Because you go now and there's barbed wire fence like it's a prison. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I mean.
All right, so we're going
to have to go in aerially.
Yeah, we're going to have to be more creative with the next round, but we can organize that. And again, I think if we have the numbers, you start pushing in. And, a lot of our citizens are armed.
I mean, I feel comfortable in my enclave suburb because everybody's armed. I'm armed, and it's like I'm in a gated community. And
I just had a dream last night that I was like, it's time to get a gun. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I have a wall safe. It's in. I'm very protected. I have multiple guns. I grew up on a farm, so I grew up in Corpus Christi on a farm. My dad is probably bipolar. We didn't know that, but we move every 3 years. He was not in the military. He was actually court-martialed and served in Leavenworth, so it's not a military family.
Interesting.
But we moved every 3 years, so it was farm and then beach. And so growing up on a farm, we always had guns.
Yeah.
My closeted gay uncle used to take me babysitting. He would babysit us and take us out shooting guns into oil reserves on the beach. And I mean, that's not something that most drag queens experienced. And I'm ready for conflict. I'm ready for armed conflict, or just call my brother and my cousin and them. When I did that show in not the one we did. Did you meet my family briefly?
That seems familiar. Mm-hmm.
So my brother and uncle and cousins, my uncle has liquid dynamite in his trunk, and they're just very camo wearing, fighting people. And I just always make sure they have free tickets to my shows when I go into...
These liberal friends of mine who are so ready to overthrow the government, as they put it.
What?
Shouldn't you want... You're going to need to team up with Camo McGun Nut over here. Because, let's talk about really, again, instead of overthrowing... It's the same thing with, instead of defunding the police, let's talk about restructuring some things, okay? Let's instead of talking about overthrowing the government, let's talk about making the governors scared of us.
Yeah.
And that's something that we need the help of our our conservative brethren to do that, and sisterin, and all the Karens. We need the Karens there with their, yeah.
And
so,
humans, like so then that's. I hate to make grandiose statements, but like in metrosexuality, when it was coming around, I was like, I think in 20 years the gender lines will be blurred. And I used to tell everybody that, and they'll call me, when they're like, "You were so right." I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, you give men hair gel, next thing you know, they're transitioning."
Yeah.
And it's just that was the fear back then, and then most people, like my mother, still think that's happening because it is. It is. So were there more trans people that we had to shove back in a box or not? But we're all human. And it's not about our gender markers. It's not about, because I'll bring this up, is the big talking point I heard was that trans shooter is now galvanized this movement of like, there's a trans day of awakening where trans people are getting guns and they're going to go cull people. I'm like, that's an old feminist move. They still want to cull men, and they call drag blackface and they do all that. Again, how do you get those people out of this cult mentality when it all comes from the internet?
Right.
And we're all tied to it daily, and it's our business now. So it goes back to regulating tech companies.
Yeah, but then we're asking this corrupt government to do the regulation.
right.
So that's where I'm like, I don't know.
Again, back to the gallows.
Right. I think we're going to have to do gallows on this. I mean, I think we have to realize, like, it's fine to have opinions about, abortion rights, putting kids on puberty blockers, gun rights, whatever, you know what I mean? It's fine to have opinions on those things, but to make them the center of your attention or the deciding point in, like, not only who you vote for, but whether you're that's not, there's so many big issues going on about our everybody who runs this country is selling us all out for themselves, to other rich country. We're being sold out.
Yeah.
So it's time for us all to realize that. Like, you know what? Again, that's why I'm like, I could kind of half joking, but like, if you're so worried about, like, I have my own opinions about the lines of some of the trans stuff, but like, again, if you're worried about kids sterilizing themselves, it's the queers. Fuck them.
Right. Because as soon as we prove it genetic, then they'll be like, you need to be castrated.
Right, exactly.
You need to be
Remember,
sterilized.
the government used to make gay people sterile. They used to force chemical castration. Now these trans women are doing that to themselves. Shouldn't you just be like counting that as a win on some level? Like, everyone, but either way, it's like, just fuck it. Like, just like, that doesn't need to be the center of your politics. The center of your politics needs to be a anti-corptocracy, because that's what's fucking us all over, and that
because who's running who profits from more hormones being distributed?
Right.
It's private sector that bottles into the government, that's bought, sold, and paid for by the pharmaceutical companies. So it's like, are you getting the right information?
Right.
Because what did cave trans people do?
Right.
I mean, there wasn't silicone in breasts, and like, there wasn't all that.
They weren't killing themselves if they didn't get hormones.
And society shows most societies revered them as the highest form. So how do we get back to that?
Let's just get back to that.
Tits and cutting our genitals off. I'm all for it if that's where you want to transition to for sexual nature. And I'm not depriving people because I don't transition. It is solely based on that. It's like, what did we do back then?
It would be ideal to not feel like you needed to rely on pharmaceutical companies and or surgeries and whatever for the rest of your life. It would be ideal if you could learn to live with your endogenous hormone system. And then, if the culture were much more open to people transgressing gender norms, and if the culture were more at the space of like, oh, actually, when you're gender queer, that means you're like one of the special people who kind of understands both on a level.
Sides. We should go ask them.
We should ask them, exactly. I do think gender queer people should be asked for our opinions on most things, and because it's like. That if that cultural shift happened, then I think people would actually. Right now, you get more cachet if you do take hormones.
Right.
If you do, then at least in the gender world, in the liberal world, you're seen as like a more real gendery person. Whereas it's like either way. Now on the conservative side, fuck all of us. But if we had this kind of thing where it was like, yeah, we know that gendery people are, have this interesting perspective, and we value that, and we allowed people to express themselves however they wanted to, I think people's desire to physically transition, to hormonally transition would actually lessen. I think that would go down. And I think, and the people who are on the conservative side who are uncomfortable with all the medicalization, I think they should be going for that too. But the idea of then you say, men aren't allowed to dress as women. It's like, okay, pick one or the other.
Right.
Okay.
Well, what is, because, but and like I said, I'm all, like, pass the laws, they're unconstitutional. I'll fight to my dying day to make sure you understand they're unconstitutional and it's freedom of expression. But to, like, it doesn't phase me. I'm all about stoicism. It's like through hard work. It's like, it's not through pleasure. And so it's like, just work and set your life by example, lead your life by example, instead of like demanding you're supposed to like me. No, I'm just gonna be a great member of society and contribute and produce money and goods, and I'm going to be out entertaining, and I'm gonna do things that like, yeah, you're not going to catch me on Twitter jacking my dick off for OnlyFans. I'm not anti-sex work. That's just not how I see myself as an example of society. And I don't judge my friends that do. I just personally, my personal belief is that live your life by example, and that's not catering to them to live within that. It's just I'm not out there to fuck all day, and like that doesn't. I've actually, I'll say this. I don't know how much time we have, but like, I've been celibate for the most part for 9 years. I go on stage and talk about sucking and fucking and crazy shit that I've done. Well, yeah, I mean, it's my past, but that's the art of comedy. I'm talking about things in the past and how I shaped the story. But no, I chose hard work instead of sex, and I because I didn't like the rejection I was getting. I could deal with the rejection in comedy and acting and entertainment, but I couldn't deal with it on a gay world's basis, because I zoomed out and saw myself differently, which was, I'm attracted to straight men more than I am gay men. So why am I trying to get gay men to fuck me? I don't want them to. And when I just stopped it, and I was able to like take all that distraction and pleasure seeking, and part of that quitting drinking led to, I didn't have that rejection and didn't have that identity as a trans person or a gay person or a sex addicted person anymore. I was just working. And I find people attractive. Am I asexual? No. But at that point, once I threw myself into work, I became very successful. And that's something that I'd like to lead by example to other people, that the biggest problem is our sexy hormones in our 20s don't really allow for us to see beyond that. I just want to be popular, and I just want to be fuckable, and I just want to go to the gym every day, and I just want people. It's never enough. I mean, it's like I was never fat enough for the bear community. I was never skinny enough for the twink community. I was never drag queen enough for the drag. I didn't shoplift enough for the drag community. No, I did. Actually, I had a whole career in shoplifting, though. Another show. But, there's just, I was always my own person. And through that, like, is how I shape my worldview, is like, once I took sex out of the equation, I became hyper-focused, and I became really eye on the prize and got things done. And it was the joy of challenge instead of pleasure-seeking that made that shift. And I think a lot of people just, outside of politics, outside of your individual feelings, and whether you're a goth kid or this or that, like, just pour it into work. And that's American pure capitalism. I'm not looking for a co-op farm. I'm just saying,
you can work in a lot of ways that aren't even remunerated, but find something that's meaningful to you, some pursuits that are challenging and meaningful, and make sure that that's the center of your life and not your pursuit of pleasure.
Right. Yeah, do what you were put here on earth. We can all fuck, and we can all do those things, and we can, fall down the victim of I always say it's like your parents. Our generation is very focused on our traumas, and we're very focused on our. I'm like, it's like my mom. It's like I asked this question. I'm like, you've always been emotionally unavailable to me, and it's traumatized me. And she's like, "What, do you know why?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "You as a child would come home in elementary and my mom's very vain, and she looks like this, and she's like, and you would come home and go, why are you the oldest mom on the block? And I was like, oh. And then she's like, and then we would be at a cocktail party at the country club, and somebody would compliment my Rolex, and you'd make sure to go, well, she got it in Mexico, it's fake. I was like, okay, so some of my trauma from you being emotionally unavailable is because I was a piece of shit child.
Yeah, children are supposed to be pieces of shit.
Yeah,
she's supposed to be the adult. Oh, well.
And then one other time, the first time they ever left my brother and I alone, we were very young. Because in the 80s, everybody got left alone, right? Like, nobody cared. I think within 10 minutes of them leaving, I went to all the neighbors and told them we've been abandoned. So, just always had a thirst for dramatics.
Oh, good.
So you wonder why her parents didn't. It's like, and then my
Yeah.
mom tells stories. It's like, my mom beat me with a belt buckle if I, like, made one noise before 10 a.m. And I'm like, yeah, and we're worried about you didn't smile at me enough.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, our
exactly.
problems are more internal, and healing.
Yeah.
Healing is what we all need, and it's not through therapy or anything. It's, in my opinion, labor camps.
Labor camp. It's work. Work works. All right. Well, I think we solved some of the world's problems today. We're going to make some progress anyway. Do you want to promote anything to the
Yeah,
people?
so you can catch me, I don't know when this will air, but Moon Tower this Wednesday. It's my debut, Velveeta Room, 7 o'clock. My show at Cap City Comedy Club. It's not like a set Sunday, but it's on their calendar. So Drag Brunch. I host and have 3 comics, 3 drag queens, 2 hours of fun.
Very fun, yeah.
I could check my phone and make an announcement about a TV show. Let's see.
This won't come out for a few weeks.
Well, that's good. Then people will know about it by then. But so I'll be on House Hunters. Thanks. Yeah, 4 episodes of House Hunters. So Drag Queen Realtor. Also, so at dragrealty.com, you can sign up for having a drag queen real estate agent in Austin, Texas.
Nice. Sweet. And follow, is it?
Yeah, everything's at Ruby Dickulous.
Ruby
The
Dickulous.
website, such a unique name. And then, so Insta,
All of it.
Twitter, all of it's at Ruby Dickulous. Venmo, all
Venmo.
of it. Yeah.
My Venmo's gay, Arielle, for anyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. And yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, all that kind of stuff, everybody. All right, bye.